Hi, SAS runners. It's Amanda, Casey, and Ryan here today. We are meeting to discuss with you some of the things that we've learned along the way with running, our running experience, and a few more tips for that last week. So we're going to start out today. Casey, how did you start running?
So I was a dancer growing up. So, when that period in my life ended, I thought, well, I've got to do something because I needed to move, and I enjoyed moving. My dad was a runner, so I would periodically just run with him here and there, and I always enjoyed it, but I just didn't really have time to commit to it. So I kind of went out one day and started running. Didn't enjoy it for a long time. It was hard, but I always felt really good afterwards. So that's what kind of got me glued into it, because I just love that feeling after it. Now I enjoy the whole process, but that's pretty much how I started running. Was I just needed a new activity as I got older, and one that I could do really anywhere and was very accessible to me.
How about you, Ryan? Now it's your mid coffee sip.
Mid coffee sip. So I grew up playing field sports. So I played soccer and lacrosse my entire young life. And then once I basically aged out, right, got out of school, you just run out of time to participate in team activities for the most part, especially right away. And I actually got into triathlon afterwards, because it was something I could do and compete on my own time, train on my own time, and not have to meet up with any given team. So I have run for most of my life, but really didn't get into it until I was about 19 or 20 as sole modality.
Cool. And I started running when I was 12 or 13. So I attempted to play sports when I was little, but I'm never really good at any team sports, or played softball for a little while. And starting high school, I decided that I wanted to try cross country and track. And so the summer before my freshman year of high school, I started running very slowly. It was very hot. I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, so it's toasty there. And I actually fell in love with it pretty quickly. Really enjoyed the way it made me feel. It made me feel both during and afterwards. And I've been running since then, with the exception of a couple breaks during both my pregnancies and a little bit postpartum. But other than that, and a couple injuries, but not a ton along the way. So let's see. What do you guys think is your biggest challenge to running?
Biggest challenge. I think, it's hard now to say, so I'm trying to look back just because now it's part of my routine. But probably for me, along the way, as I really grew to love running, is I wanted to do it kind of all the time. And I realized it is a high impact sport. It's something that, I can't do every day, especially as I age. So my biggest challenge is not running every day, because I do enjoy it. It's kind of the activity probably I love the most right now, and have for probably the last 18 years I've been running. So for me, it's probably just making sure that I don't do it too much. So just managing that and making sure I have other activities to help offset it, which I have grown to love over the years as I entered triathlon. And that's another reason why I got into triathlon too, was just to help maintain my body and fitness level while not always running.
Cool. How about you, Ryan?
Actually pretty close to the same thing, in the same vein, was just trying to tone it down a little bit. Once you really start to get into a groove when you're running, you really enjoy the the time to yourself, or the time with very like-minded individuals, and kind of the endorphin dump that you get from going on runs as well. And it was really learning to balance the recovery side of things to try to supplement and offset the wear and tear that you do by running a lot of miles. And so it was that was the biggest challenge, because who likes to do the mobility stuff and all of the recovery? Most of us don't. So it's something you have to make yourself do.
Yeah. I would say, right now, one of my biggest challenges is trying to find the time to do it. I mean, I would love to run every day, but I'm the same way. I can't anymore. It doesn't feel good to my body. But certainly since we've been home, but even in regular life when we're at work, trying to find the time that I have available to go out and run. My husband and I work different work schedules. So a lot of time right now, I have 2 little boys, and that means that running is either with them or while I'm at work. And running with kids is always interesting. Thankfully now I'm really happy that we're at an age where they both can bike while I run. We even did that this weekend. We went for a 6-mile run, just me and the boys. And it was still a great workout and really, really fun. I do think though, thinking back to when I first started running, some of the biggest challenges I found were trying to find the right shoes. So I started in these really cool Adidas that I loved. They were really fun and pretty, and picked them out for cross country. I was so excited to share them with the team, and they did not work for my feet. So I had to go through a few pairs and learn that lesson. Probably that was one of the ones I learned the hard way. And then also, one of the best things I can say, when you first start running, it feels like you're always out of breath. So learning how to tone it back and not run quite so fast, so that it is comfortable. And I still remember to this day running with my cross country coach and him saying, you can slow down. You can slow down as much as you want to and still run. And it still counts as running. And so at that, I continue to do this day. If I'm out of breath, I slow down if I need to. So
yeah.
You guys have any challenges or things that maybe things you learned the hard way that you want to share?
Well, and you mentioned the shoes. I want to say that was the first thing that came to my mind when thinking of probably the things I learned the hard way. Because yeah, the same thing. I went with, oh, these shoes I've had for a long time and they feel good, but I'd had them for probably like 5 years, and was running in those. And of course, knees started hurting, this and that. And then finally was educated to a point where it's like, okay, no, I need to get fitted for the right shoe, find the right fit. And it took some trial and error to do that until I found what worked for me. And that's definitely was different than what worked for the people that I was running with at the time when I started running. Yeah, so that was definitely probably like one of the biggest things I learned, and I try to instill in a lot of new runners, is making sure you have the proper shoe for you and getting the right professional to help you find that. And then also I learned probably the hard way is not warming up properly. Just going out there and running and not doing the right type of movements prior to running. And, I got injured by not doing that. So learned again, resets, and really since learning probably those 2 biggest lessons, I really haven't been injured other than when I overdo it. And I kind of know when I've done that, so, for me, I think those are probably the 2 biggest lessons I learned that, I would like to hopefully pass on to our new runners as something to consider.
How about you, Ryan? Anything you learned the hard way?
Definitely learned the hard way. The warming up and shoes. Shoes are just about everybody's most painful experience when they're first starting to run, because a good pair of shoes is a little bit on the pricier side compared to what most people are looking to put in when they start something that should be very accessible to everyone, since we can just walk outside and start running. But also planning ahead, especially when you start to put in a decent amount of volume and start to add miles to your run. I was never a fan of carrying anything with me at all. And you learn the hard way if you go out at, say, the wrong time of day, that you should probably bring things like water, even a little bit of nutrition if it came to like gels or something like that. But I was adamantly against it when I started running because I didn't need that. And that's a huge mistake sometimes when you go through. It's also just unnecessary suffering, right? It's carrying the extra water, carrying a couple extra gels doesn't add a whole lot of weight to you. So just suck it up and bring those things with you. But, yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, we've all been coaching people to run for quite a while. What would you say is the thing that you find most often that happens with new runners that you have to coach them through, and how could we help our listeners now?
For me, I think the biggest thing always, well, for sure was the shoes, because I want to say almost every new runner I ever worked with, they get shin splints right away. And just, making them understand that there is some adjustment your body has to make to that new sort of high impact activity. So there'll be some things you have to kind of work through, but there also are things you can do to help make it a little more comfortable, you know, like the proper warm up. So really instilling in them the importance of that so that they can run for the long run. And not just, you know, for a short-term period of time, but they can kind of do that forever. And I feel like those, and just making sure they're not doing too much too soon. I know when I've coached people just to do, say, a 5K even, or even maybe they are somebody who can run 3 to 5 miles, but they want to do a half marathon. They want to jump into that like next week, you know, that distance, and instilling in them that it's a slow, gradual progression in order to help, you know, with just success in that distance, but also just in preventing, you know, injuries. So just making sure they slowly increase that, you know, mileage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the idea of just balance in all things. So stopping people from putting in too much volume at first is a huge aspect of that, but then making sure they understand that when they start running, that's not the only thing you're adding in. It's you need to do all of the other work to make sure that your body's moving along properly, whether it's just sleep, nutrition. You're not just plugging something in, you're trying to spread things out so that you can have longevity in the sport, so that you don't give yourself marathon knees. That shouldn't be a term, and it has been for a couple generations now, and it's something that we can definitely change and address. And so getting people to realize that structure is important. You really can't just wing it if you want to succeed in what you're doing, or you can, but you're probably going to suffer unnecessarily in the process. Is probably the biggest thing for new runners, or at least when I do programming.
Yeah. And I'd say that's one of the things I really like about how we teach at the RFC is that we do, all of us encourage balanced workouts. It's okay, so you want to run, but we've given you a warm up and a strength training workout and mobility exercises. We encourage everyone to take yoga, or at least try it just in case. So it's not for everyone. That's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do really love that about us. When I think about clients that I've worked with that started running, I mean, one of the things is just like my same mistake, running too fast. So too much or too fast to start out with. We all think that, I do find that people usually think that running means as fast as you can. But there's a lot of variance in that, and there's different reasons to go fast and go slow. I also, one of the other things I like for people to learn right away is to be compassionate with their body. So as you mentioned, Casey, they're adjusting. They don't need to go right into it full-fledged into a half marathon if they're just starting. And then keeping things balanced, Ryan is right. So that's one of the things that I think is hard to understand when you first start running, that you can't just like running every day is going to be what solves the problem or gets you to the finish line. The other thing I like to make sure with the compassion is that, you know, if 5K is your thing, then 5K is your thing. Yeah, or if you want to be a marathoner, it's a marathoner. And those are two very different ways to train. So how about you guys share, Ryan, you can start this time. What is your favorite race experience? So what's your favorite distance, first of all, and then what's your favorite race experience?
My favorite distance is probably still 10K, just because it's relatively fast. I'm not a great sprinter, and I can pretty much go at a single pace for a long period of time. And 10K is just a nice medium ground in between pouring a ton of hours into training and just not being fast enough to hold up in 5Ks. But my favorite experience so far has definitely been Blue Ridge, when we all did that a couple of years ago, because it's just an entertaining race. You get to sacrifice sleep for 24 hours and run in legs, adding up to a marathon. It makes it significantly more entertaining, and you get to drive in a van alongside people and yell at them and throw water at them for hours. It's great.
Smell them.
Smell them.
Definitely. See,
it's a very bonding experience.
Oh, about you, Casey?
So my favorite, racing experience, or distance rather, is probably half marathon. I like it because it is doable as far as length of like commitment time, in my opinion. But yet I don't have to run quite as fast as I do in a 5 or 10K, which hurt. I like them, but they hurt. And then I don't have to run as slow as I do in a marathon, which to me actually hurts me too. So it's kind of that middle ground for me. It gives me the pace that I actually almost settle into, and kind of my moderate to, a little bit faster pace, just regular runs. So I can kind of do what I'm comfortable with. In that particular distance. Blue Ridge is definitely probably one of my favorite race experiences as well. I'll pick a different one so that's not the same. Because yes, it was a very different one in the camaraderie, and it was just, you were doing things that, even at the beginning, it's like, oh God, I'm not gonna be able to do this, but you do it, and you're like, wow, that's cool. But I also went, and this was with a group of runners that I kind of hung out with when I first started running, that I worked with. We went to Disneyland in California. So again, like flying somewhere with a group of people who, had that common interest, just having fun, kind of getting away from our families and lives. And the experience there, Disney always does things really well. I used to live in Florida, so we used to do the regular Disney World races all the time. So this was kind of a different, little bit of a different scene, flying to California to do the Disneyland experience. And yeah, it's just, they do everything right and kind of treat you like a queen or king. So yeah.
I think about when you said the 5K, both of you said 5Ks hurt. A couple years ago when we did the SAS 5K, not the Geffen 5K, but the SAS Championship 5K, and I hadn't raced it in a while, and I decided, well, let me see what it feels like to run a 5K again. I haven't really raced 5K since high school. So sore, so much more sore from the 5K than any half marathon or marathon that I've finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Casey. My distance is definitely a half marathon if it's just running. But I really enjoy triathlon, honestly, over straight running races these days if I'm going to race. And I do like long distance stuff. So half Ironman and Ironman are really my favorites. That's one of the things I've been thinking about lately, is I really miss that training.
She's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's why we love her.
Yeah, I just like that long distance stuff. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, you get to be by yourself for a long time, so that's kind of nice too. It's your quiet time.
That's true.
That's why I enjoy that as well. Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. Speaking of races, do you guys have race tips for our participants who are doing their first 5K this week? Now we're doing a virtual version, but let's say if virtual or not, depending on how you want to finish your Geffen 5K, you certainly could race it. So what would you say would be some of the things you want to make sure people know when they think about racing? And Casey, you can go ahead and start this one.
Okay. First, find a really flat downhill course because you get that opportunity this year. No, I'm just kidding.
There is an email going on right now.
Really. Oh, I know. And I have I have my own course, but that may or may not be all downhill. We'll see. But what, in all seriousness, leading up to race day, and this is one thing I've definitely learned over all the many races I've done, is it's not really what's important necessarily the day before you race. Use the days leading up to that, maybe 3 or 4 days out, to make sure you're getting the proper rest, hydrating really well, fueling really well with, good nutritious foods, and don't use just the day before to do all that, because by then you're usually probably nervous and you might not sleep, or, and obviously in this particular instance, you're able to pick the time that you run. So it might not be an early morning run. You might be able to sleep in, but if you're looking forward to maybe another time where you're actually showing up in person, just remembering, use the 3 to 4 days to help prepare you, and you're gonna show up and probably be at your best, even if, say, the day before you didn't eat as well, or maybe you were traveling for a race and you didn't sleep as well. It really, I don't know, really matters what you did probably a few days before that. So that's my biggest sort of race day tip.
Thank you.
Mine is always going to be go to the bathroom one more time than you think you have to. Always. Without fail, especially if you're a coffee drinker.
Yeah.
You're just more comfortable. That's just the short and sweet of it. And like Casey said, it's all about just being consistent leading up to the race day. You can't just jam in having one good night of sleep if you've had garbage sleep for a week, and same thing with food and any of your nutrition. So, and stress. If you have something leading up to it that you know is going to stress you out, you've got to be aware of that, and you may even have to dial it back a little bit when you go out on your route. So
yeah, that mental stress plays a big toll, and I think that's something that a lot of athletes do leave out of their equation of how well they're going to race. I always find it entertaining that I typically pick, and I know we don't get to do it this year, but I typically pick May as the month that I'm going to do my big event. And it's also with GEFM being one of my biggest events at work, I tend to put the two of them in the same time, and that is not always the best setup. So I echo both of those. I agree, sleep the day before, the couple days before. I know anybody that I've written a training plan for, that is one of the things that's listed on that race week, is make sure you prioritize sleep this week. So no Netflix binging. It's not the time to start a new show.
Right.
Drinking plenty of water, and then of course getting good food and managing your stress. And then just being aware that the day before a race, you certainly are not going to feel normal. So you can do your best to set yourself up for success, but just know that if you're sleeping in a hotel, it's not your bed. So anything that you can do to set up that to make it as close to normal. And I sleep with an eye mask and earplugs, so those come with me everywhere I go now. So that can help. And so does lavender essential oil, because that helps me fall asleep when I'm having trouble sleeping. So let's move on. Ryan, I want you to talk to us a little bit about training volume and RPE.
Okay, so we controlled put a lot of structure in for everybody for the 0 to 5K plan, which kind of it obviously allows us to handle exactly how much volume everyone's getting. But it's something that I hope everyone was at least paying attention to as they were going through the program and as they get ready for the race day, because we have a lot of gadgets and we have a lot of technology that we use constantly right now. And that's good. It helps us keep track of metrics, but it also tends to make us ignore how we're feeling, especially when we're getting into something like running for the first time. And so as you look back at all of the training that you did, and as you move forward in all of your training, I really challenge everybody to keep note of how they felt during their training runs and how they feel the next day, because your ability to stop overreaching and overtraining, which isn't a huge risk when we're talking about training for a 5K, but if you do continuously train to run for races, it can pose more of an issue. How you feel the next day is the best indicator, because we're more than likely going to do kind of inflammation damage and just stress our bodies out more than causing muscular pain in the grand scheme of things. And just like Casey said right at the beginning of us talking, it's more is not always better, and especially when it comes to running. So it's good to be consistent, and we always need to kind of work with a volume that will obviously allow us to improve as opposed to undershooting the mark. But you would be surprised how little volume you actually need to improve. And keeping track of how you feel or your perceived exertion after every run or during every run is really important for handling that. So even if it's just a couple of notes next to your Strava file or next to your Suunto file or Garmin file, whatever it is, or just in a journal is very helpful, so that you can look back at it and see if there's anything that really stands out to you going forward. And it's a really good thing just to add in to any physical activity, to be honest.
So let's all share, because I think this is a good example of things that can affect people differently. So Ryan, you can go ahead and start, but what does it feel like when you haven't recovered well from a workout?
I am particularly drowsy if the next morning when I wake up, if I haven't recovered from a workout particularly well. And I generally will, if I am not hungry when I wake up, that's actually usually a pretty good indicator. All other things being normal, if I'm not hungry when I wake up, it's a pretty good indicator that I probably overdid it, actually, because my appetite gets suppressed pretty heavily, especially with endurance work. But other than that, it's really kind of any kind of joint discomfort is usually a pretty good indicator too.
Casey, how do you feel?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I'm definitely, and it's funny because I felt like I kind of struggled with this last week, is just being home and not being on as set of a plan as I typically am, like when I'm going to work or if I have an event coming up. And of course, I don't really have anything coming up. So I've just been kind of doing whatever. And I think my body last week was like, you're doing too much. I mean, because I can't swim now, I can't do the things that I typically do to help balance out, running. So I will say, like, I feel like last week it was like I was lethargic and I felt like there was no reason for it. I was going to bed early. I was getting like 9 some hours sleep, but still was lethargic. When I would run, I was like achy. And I'm like, so finally I'm like, okay, my body's telling me you need to recover. So I know now to listen to that. And then another indicator is like heart rate's like shooting out the roof when I'm just jogging. Like, yeah, that's a problem. Normally this, should not feel that hard, whatever particular pace I'm at. So those 3 things, are huge indicators that I can now recognize and not ignore like I did probably, in my 20s. So
yeah.
And take the
and
right
I think that's important as you continue running, that you do pay attention to what your signs and symptoms are of overtraining or just not recovering well. I mean, sometimes it just means one day of a little bit lighter, and sometimes it means a couple days. So keeping in mind with that and noticing how you're feeling. I know I typically, when I had a really hard day and haven't recovered well, I'm sleepy, but I also wake up extremely sore. And I don't experience soreness as often now, but when I am sore, that I know that I really have to take it easy the next day, and I really need to choose recovery options for movement. So it's often walking, yoga, or if we have the pool, of course, getting in the pool. So yeah. So one thing we haven't covered in 0 to 5K is nutrition. And really, one of the reasons we don't cover this we don't talk about nutrition a whole lot in 0 to 5K, although I'm sure Casey and Ryan would both agree with me that nutrition is a huge component of fitness and wellness in general, and how you feel and how you can perform athletically. But this is a shorter distance, so your workouts hopefully haven't been more than an hour. And maybe more in that 30 to 45 minute range, depending on your starting pace. And how much you're walking and running. But we don't cover nutrition a whole lot, but we do want to bring it up because it is an important topic. If you have questions about it, don't forget that we have nutritionists available to you at SAS that are more than happy to help with that. So do reach out for any additional assistance if you need assistance with nutrition. But generally, we're just going to advise you to go with a balanced diet. Fruits and vegetables are certainly going to be ideal and help you fuel. The timing of your nutrition is very specific to you. So, for example, because I am a long distance athlete, I don't really have a problem eating right before I go for a run. But I do know that most runners, and specifically new runners, eating 30 minutes to an hour before a run is usually a terrible idea. So I've spent a lot of time teaching my body that we're going to eat and we're going to digest it very slowly while we move forward. But that is not the norm. So that would be one of the recommendations I would have with nutrition. And the other one would be that when you consider what foods you do eat right before you run. So if it's that 30 minutes to an hour mark, make sure it's something that's easy for you to digest. So heavier foods tend to take a little bit longer. Those are going to be your higher fat foods. Generally speaking, and high fiber foods are usually not awesome before runs. You guys have anything you want to add to that?
No.
Nope. Not for 0 to 5K anyway.
Yeah, not yet. So there's a lot more involved in nutrition if you want to continue to increase your mileage. But I've already mentioned 5K is an awesome distance. If this is a distance you really enjoy, you should stay. If you are, as we're moving into next steps, then we will be sending you a training plan and ideas of where to go from here. But if you're looking to continue to increase your mileage, especially as it gets warmer outside, sports nutrition is going to be something that you're going to want to consider, specifically with hydration and possibly calories along the way. So next steps, if you've really enjoyed, this is my normal chat, and I give this to every running class I've ever taught, that if you've really enjoyed this running experience, by all means, please keep running. We will take a little bit of time, or we would recommend a little bit of time after the race to recover and then kind of get back into a routine again. But if you've tried this, you've given this 5 weeks a solid go of running and you're just still really not liking it, there's so many options in fitness that please try something else. Please try something that you find that's fun, or at the very minimum, something that's tolerable. So exercising is really hard for us, and for everybody, we certainly understand that. Now, the three of us are in the fitness field. It is something that we love, but we certainly understand that exercise is not everybody's thing. So please find something that you enjoy. And Ryan mentioned this earlier about connecting with like-minded people. So all three of us really have enjoyed experiences, particularly racing and training experiences, where there's a group of us running together. And so if you want to keep running, we do recommend reaching out. If you haven't joined the endurance group at SAS, you've got that as an option of a virtual community for right now. But certainly when we get back to campus, there's ways to meet other runners. Or look for running groups in your community. So we at SAS and the RFC, we want to support your workouts, whether it's coming to work out with us or going to join the Godiva Club or your local running store club. We want you moving in any way that's going to work for you. You guys have anything else you want to add to that?
No, just have fun with it. You know, find your pace, embrace it. Don't ever compare yourself to any other runner. That's probably one of the other things I see a lot with new runners. It's like, I'm not as fast as Joe or Sally, and that doesn't matter. You know, you're running and you're running for you, and just enjoy that time, like while you're out there, just moving and, you know, being just happy that you can, and, you know, thankful that you have the ability to do that, and have that opportunity. Yeah, just be you with it.
Yep, there is always going to be somebody who's faster than you. It's just the way of the world. That's not to rain on anyone's parade, but it's just the case. So keeping that in mind, enjoy it. It's your chance to move through the world, get out, see some nature, and take advantage of it and just enjoy the process. So.
Yeah, and when you think of, I do agree. Like I have heard a lot of new runners say, well, that person's faster than me, I don't want to go running with them. One thing I can say with that is, if somebody invites you to go running with them, they want to spend time with you. So if it's a faster runner, they're gonna slow down to enjoy your time with you. And they wouldn't invite you to run if they didn't want to run with you. So keep that in mind. Don't get held up in your different paces, for sure. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, we are so proud of you guys for finishing 0 to 5K. We are so looking forward to seeing you back on campus. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions this week or anytime. And we will see you soon. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Good job, everybody.